Are you failing to appreciate who gave you an opportunity to be where you are in your life? Are you failing to recognize that the way that we actually move forward and go forward in our lives and see what's next is actually having the ability to appreciate who has been in your life and who has opened doors for you? I look back now a little bit more succinctly, more thoughtfully as I get older, and I realize that many times in my life, someone opened a door for me. Someone gave me a chance. Someone gave me a call. Hi everybody, Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee, where we talk about life, leadership, and legacy. We want to help you discover your capacity and level of leadership. I'm so excited that you are here because I'm going to talk about a different subject today. But if you have not done it yet, go and subscribe to Leading with Lee on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. Well, today I'm so excited because you are here for another episode of Leading with Lee, and we're still in my birthday month. If you have not seen the last episode of Leading, I would encourage you to go watch it. I share about some of the things that I've experienced in my life up until this point, and what I think back to my 20s and what are the things that had transpired in my 20s. And I thought through those things and shared about those things. But I also talk a great deal about what I am hoping for over the next decade, and I hope that you will enjoy that episode. But I thought about staying in kind of the theme of September because it is my birthday month and I want to keep talking about certain things. And with that in mind, I wanted to talk particularly today about an interesting subject that we tend not to think about. And I'll get to that in a moment. But before I do that, I want to give you my definition of leadership, which I do all the time. So I believe that leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, processes, and people, processes, and organizations in that direction. Leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, organizations, and personal processes in that direction. In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King, who we have understood to be one of the most impactful and transformative figures in American history, wrote a book that I am actually currently reading called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And he's writing in this book about the era right after the historic legislations that were passed in the 1960s, from the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, 65, and even the Immigration Rights Act of 1966. And he begins to articulate some particulars that he had felt very strongly about. And King, in this book, actually talks a great deal about poverty and how that is the next battle of American society. And though you may not be facing what King was thinking about at that point in time, the question I want to answer and kind of talk through today is, what do we do after we reach a goal? And my title is, What's Next? King, in his book, gave us this interesting look because we recognize that in King's thought process, it wasn't enough to just get those pieces of legislation passed. It was something we have to do next. And this is not the end, but just the beginning. And as I've turned 30, I'm asking myself this question and considering what's next. And so I got three things that I want to share with you today. My 3 points today is, number one, my last accomplishment is the floor for the next one. Number 2, appreciation is needed. And number 3, the desire for growth will cost you. So let's deal with the first one. It is, your last accomplishment is the floor for the next one. Now, I know many of us have either seen photos of skyscrapers or we have experienced our life seeing a skyscraper. And as I was thinking about this, how skyscrapers are created or made, they generally are built on top of each other. Skyscrapers are humongous buildings. They're very, very giant buildings. Some of the biggest skyscrapers in the world are pretty magnificent. I remember seeing photos of skyscrapers in places like Hong Kong and Singapore and even in Dubai, and how these incredibly brilliant or beautiful buildings are constructed. But in the process of developing or growing those buildings, you would notice that every floor of that building has a ceiling and it has a floor. And the ceiling and the floor generally are at the same starting point. And for many of us, when we look at our lives, we have to be thoughtful about the fact that as we are growing, as we're developing, as we're coming into the things that we want to accomplish, that in order for us to go to the next level, we have to recognize that the last thing we did was our floor. Have you ever met somebody who every time you engage with them, you went to high school with this person, or you know this person for a long period of time, and everything that you talk about with them is things that they used to do? That becomes an annoying thing because you can, for you, it seems like this person has not evolved beyond this moment. And what I want to tell you, even as I turned 30, I got to recognize, as I turned 30 last week, I can tell you that I am not thinking about my last accomplishments. I'm thinking about, what do I want to accomplish next? I'm thinking about, hey, do I have an appreciation, which I'll talk about in a moment, but do I have an appreciation for what I've already done? And am I using it as building blocks to the next thing? Do I have a presence of mind to recognize that the next thing that I do is a thing that I must be adamant about and pursue, and really be bodacious in how I go after that thing? And one thing I know for us, as we recognize even in sports, has always taught us this, is that we only talk about the champion for so long. We only talk about the champion for a few weeks. We don't continuously talk about the champion. Earlier this year, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl. But in their first game of this NFL season, which was about 2 weeks ago, or last week, excuse me, they lost the first game of the season. And all the talk of them being the defending champs goes out the window because everybody's thinking about the fact that they lost the first game of the season. People are questioning, oh, is this a team to do a repeat? Are they able to run it back? Will they have the effectiveness or ability to be effective over the next season? Because your last accomplishment gets out of people's minds when somebody else accomplishes the same goal. Are you going to allow yourself to be an afterthought? Are you going to allow yourself to get stuck in what was and what you did at one point in your life? Are you going to be adamant about trying to continuously move forward and do something great? Because I truly believe that the way that we show up in the world and the way we make a difference is our recognition of how we are doing the things that we're doing, and our recognition of the accomplishments that we have, and knowing that we cannot get stuck in those things. And this is the perspective of King as it relates to civil rights movement. He recognized that though we got civil rights action in 1964, though we got civil rights action in 1965, though we even got action on immigration in America in 1966, we cannot get stopped there because there's so much more that needs to happen. And many of us have to recognize that there's so much more that needs to happen as a result of what you do and how you show up in the world and how you bring the things that you have to offer into any space. You have to be driven to go further and to go and do more. One of my favorite players in the NBA has since gone on was Kobe Bryant. I remember this viral clip of him going around. It was like in the finals, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the finals. It was game 2. They were up 2-0 in the finals. And the reporter asked him how comfortable did he feel as it relates to what was happening? Did he feel like they were in a good spot? And Kobe looks at the reporter and he's like, the job is not done. We're only halfway through the games that we need to win to be the champions again. And he kind of made that statement that, like, we need to focus on what matters in this moment. What matters in this moment is finishing the job. I know we won the last game, but we still got 2 more games to go to be considered the champions this season. And one thing I think is important for you and I is that we not get caught up in failing to recognize that there's more for us to do. There's more opportunities. There's more things for you to accomplish. There are more things in front of you than is behind you. And you might be saying to yourself, you might be older than I am. You may be thinking, well, I'm 50, 60, 70 years old and I have less life in front of me than behind me. Well, if you're still alive, there's more for you to do. If you're still alive, there's still some things that the world needs from you and desires to gain from you and the contributions that you can make even now. There's a prominent minister here in America that now he's in his 60s and he is being more impactful in his 60s. Bishop T.D. Jakes, we've seen how he has gone into this partnership with Wells Fargo. And through this partnership, he's actually making a huge difference by helping building multi-income housing across the United States. This happened in the 60s. We know the story of the gentleman who started KFC. The gentleman who started KFC didn't really pop off this recipe until he was like 70 something years old. Viola Davis is one of the greatest actors of our time, didn't really start to get big roles until the last 10 years of her life. She's in her late 50s. She didn't really get a big role in the movie industry until later in life. So what excuse do we have to believe that we still can't accomplish our goals? What I talked about this on here before, and I shared about Dorothy Steele a few weeks ago, how this woman started acting in her 80s. You got to recognize that if you stop believing that things are possible, you will miss an opportunity to accomplish the next goal. And that is important for you and I to keep in mind. And when we talk about what we want to accomplish, so what's next? You got to have a desire to say what's next, that drive. It doesn't mean that you don't acknowledge what you've already done. It just means that you are not allowing yourself to settle at where you have been before. Which brings me to my second point, is that appreciation matters. Appreciation is needed. You need to be appreciative. No one gets anywhere by themselves. No one accomplishes any goal by themselves. It's because somebody opened a door for you. It's because somebody gave you an opportunity to be where you are now. Somebody opened a door for you. Somebody said you could do it. Somebody said it's possible for you. Somebody gave you a chance. And by simply the fact that they gave you a chance, it actually opened up an opportunity in your life. There's this old adage that says a turtle can only get on a gate if someone puts them on it. Like no turtle can climb. No turtle can figure out how to get up on a fence. It can lean up on a fence. It can raise itself up, but it does not have the capacity or ability to be on a fence unless someone put it there. Are you failing to appreciate who gave you an opportunity to be where you are in your life? Are you failing to recognize that the way that we actually move forward and go forward in our lives and see what's next is actually having the ability to appreciate who has been in your life and who has opened doors for you? I look back now a little bit more succinctly, more thoughtfully as I get older, and I realize that many times in my life, someone opened a door for me. Someone gave me a chance. Someone gave me a call. Someone actually said, Lee, I'm going to do this thing for you to bring you into this space. And my appreciation for what has been done for me has gotten me to this point. My appreciation for the dedication of others who said, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to bring him into this space. I don't have to do this, but I'm going to expose him to this powerful thing. I remember as a teenager and even later in my teen years, I remember there are many moments where I got an opportunity twice in my early teens. I got an opportunity to page for the state legislature here in Mississippi. I was a page for the state Senate. And I remember how both times there were a few state senators who some of them have since left public life and some of them are still there that took me to lunch with them, brought me somewhere, gave me an opportunity to be in that space. And I realized that just being in their space opened up a new world to me, opened up a new understanding, opened up an opportunity for me to recognize, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. There's a lot that is transpiring in the lives of folks in my community. There's a lot that's happening around me. And these people are actually making decisions that are transforming my life. They didn't have to do it. They just brought me into that space. There's a former guest that I had on here, the former Mayor of Jackson, Tony Arbor, who was very kind to me post college, and I had gotten to meet him at different points in my life. But he literally allowed me to come into different spaces. I've shared on here before that I've actually had him on leading, and I appreciate the exposure because the exposure actually made a huge impact on my life. That ability to be in a space actually gave me a better appreciation for how I show up and how I do the things. And there's a article that was written 2022 talking about the importance for leaders to recognize that appreciation of people that work for you or get engaged with you, how profoundly important that is. How in order for us to move forward, we got to acknowledge what has happened. And they talked about in this article, they brought up a quote by Richard Branson. This man has found Virgin Airlines, and he has a humongous and powerful, profound company that's made a big difference in our world. And Mr. Bronson said, he says, as a leader of people, you must be a good listener and a great motivator. People are not different than flowers. People are no different than flowers, excuse me. When you water flowers, they flourish. He says, if you praise people, they flourish. And this is a critical attribute of the leader. The writer goes on to say in the article that acknowledging others' points of views is like stabilizing a patient in an emergency room. How important is it for you to understand that appreciation has to be a part of your theory of change, your theory of the case? It has to actually be a part of your philosophy and how you show up and how you do the work that you do. It is critical that you are somebody who is appreciative. It is critical for you to be someone who acknowledges the work and contributions of those who are connected to what you do. Because when you do that, you're giving those individuals an opportunity to see themselves as a part of the answer to the problem. How often are you making room for people to believe that they can have the next solution to an issue? How much space or capacity are you creating for others to be able to do the things that you're doing? Let's be very clear. Dr. King is considered one of the most transformational and impactful figures of the 20th century. But let's be clear, he didn't do it alone. Dr. King was aware of the fact that there were people around him that empowered him to do what he was doing. And they really, really made him the guy at that moment. He was only the tip of the spear. I know we always talk about that somebody being the tip of the spear, the linchpin, but we forget there is a whole spear. Just because we talk about the tip doesn't mean that it's the whole thing. It is a part of a bigger picture. In other words, you got to recognize that there are other aspects, there's other people, there are other things and other connective tissues that are involved that makes this thing what it is. How are you recognizing the role that you play in ensuring that people feel appreciated in what they do? What are you doing? How are you making it apparent in your life? You may not necessarily be leader of people or organizations, but you can show appreciation to your family. You can show appreciation to your friends. You can show appreciation to your partner. You can appreciate the things that you have. You can appreciate the things in which you are coming in contact with, the food that you have. You can say thank you at the restaurant. You can do those things. Why? Because that is a part of you showing appreciation. And in order for us to be effective at going to what's next, we have to appreciate what we have right now. And that's essential. That's an essential aspect of how we are going to be effective in our leadership. And one thing you know that I'm going to tell you all the time here on leading is that you have a capacity and a level of leadership. And you have to appreciate your capacity and level. You have to have knowledge of the fact that though I may not be this person or I may not operate like this person, what I bring to the table matters. What I do, how I show up matters. How I make a difference matters. How I engage people matters. How I talk to people matters. How I share information matters. It's not trivial. It actually does matter. And you got to know that when you're trying to do the things that you do, And if you're a leader of people, you have to recognize that if you appreciate your team, they actually work better. They actually are more effective. They actually do great work because you appreciate them. I'm doing a presentation actually this week, and I talk about the power of value. And one of the things that I found was, statistically speaking, that people do, and it makes sense, but people do a lot better when they feel like they are doing things on purpose and they feel like people support them in what they do. We found that 43% of employees tend to work at a higher capacity or do better work because they feel supported. They do it 24% faster. There was a Harvard Business School study that talked about this. Why is that the case? Because these people feel that they are part of something bigger than themselves. Millions of folks, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of Americans got involved in the civil rights movement. Why? Because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They were like, this is not where we're stopping. We're going to keep pushing forward. We're going to keep trying to change the narrative. We're going to keep going forward and forward and forward. We're going to keep going forward and pushing for a radical change that we believe should happen. But it happened as a result of them recognizing what they brought to the table and how they should show up. And that's something important for you and I. We can never draw back and believe that we don't have anything to give in that regard. We can never get lost in the critical nature of what we experience in our lives. We have to make sure that we appreciate where we are, that we appreciate what we bring to the table, that we appreciate what we can actually contribute to society. Because I believe that you and I can. I really think that you and I have something to give to the world around us, that people need us to be ourselves, that people need us to function at a high level, to function as if we know that what we do matters. And let's be very, very, very clear that many things that happen in our society are based on respectability politics. I know I'm about to go to the break, but I want to say this real quick. A lot of it is a respectability politics. Everybody does not get where they are because they actually, quote unquote, on paper deserve to be where they are. Some of it is proximity. Some of it is relationships and connections. Some of it is being at the right place at the right time. Some of it has nothing to do with them being qualified. Some of it has to do with all these factors that may or may not line up with what you bring to the table. But even in spite of that, even the negative things, those experiences give you an appreciation of what's next for you and how you can do the great work that you want to do. I've experienced it in my own life. There are many times where, because somebody didn't come from the same spaces that I came from, they may or may not have understood my position on a particular thing because they didn't know what that experience was like. It's not their fault, because all of us are different. But I recognize that though that is a reality, I can appreciate the fact that though we are different, I'm going to learn something in this process. And my encouragement to you as we go to the break is that you keep in mind that we can learn something from every space. We can learn something from every moment. We can learn something from everything we experience in this life. And all of it is something that we can use to make our lives better and actually move forward in the ways that we want to. And I hope that you will be encouraged to do that. At this moment, I'm going to take a break and we'll be right back after this message. Hi, everybody. Lee here, and I want to give some information to you. Do you need someone to host an event or come and speak at your event? You can now book yours truly. Book me for your event by visiting www.leeascott.com. I am so excited to connect with you and do work with you. Much love, and let's get started. And we are back. Thank you for still being here. And I'm about to wrap it up right now with this last point. And I hope that you've been inspired to continuously grow and take time and become better at what you do and actually engage in understanding that there's something out there for you beyond this moment. My last point is the desire for growth will cost you. And we talked about understanding that appreciation is an important thing, that your last accomplishment is only the fourth for the next one. But there's some work you got to do. There's there's some work that is required of you in order for you to actually go to the next level. I was thinking quite a bit about the Creed movies. As you well know, Michael B. Jordan is a star of this movie franchise that is a part of the Rocky franchise called Creed. And he plays the son of Apollo Creed, who was this incredible boxer. If you watch any of the Rocky movies, he had a strong and interesting friendship with Rocky Balboa. And we know that Creed's father was murdered in a boxing match that happened in, if I get it wrong, don't charge it to my head, not my heart, but one of the Rocky movies. And in this different franchise that focuses on Creed's son, Adonis, we see how this young man is discovering who he is. He's actually going through the process of figuring out what's happening with him. And he gets into boxing by happenstance. It's really great movies, but he gets into boxing by happenstance and he finds out his father is connected to this. And then he goes through all these different things and it goes through all these different issues throughout the series. But one thing I want to focus in on critically was the workout montages. And we see them they're iconic in the Rocky movies because we see it happening in almost every single movie. There's always that very iconic workout montage. And something I noticed in watching the Creed movies is that every time he faced a new opponent or had to go to a different level or do something different, he would change his workout regimen. He would change how he went about preparing for that fight. He kept the basics, but he went about the situation differently. And see, in this season of your life, in order for you to get what's next, you're going to have to do some stuff differently. You're going to have to operate differently, and you're going to have to focus on growth. One thing I realized in my own life, and I've shared on here many, many, many times before, is that in order for me to be a more productive person in my conversations, I realized I needed to go to therapy. Therapy is a way for me to get growth. And I'm going to share this on here. I typically don't do this, but I'm going to share this on here. Even last week was my birthday. And turning 30 and was big for me. I realized that there was some sadness there. Not because I was getting older, but there were some factors in which the things around my birthday, with having lost the job, my girlfriend not being here, all those different things, it made me have mixed feelings. And I was able to go in therapy and process that because I started realizing that there were things attached to that feeling. And that it was a part of my growth, and it allowed me to have conversations that I needed to have, and it actually caused a growth moment or allowed people to come into my space because I had created an opportunity for them to see me in a different light. And one of the things that you got to recognize as it pertains to your growth is that sometimes working out or engaging in a new way, its only job is to grow you. You have to understand that. If you don't want to grow, do not go into an environment that will make you grow. Stay where you are. Because growth has to happen. It happens naturally in your life. You are not the same size or same height or same weight that you were when you were 6 years old. Now, if they're 6 years old, listen to this. I hope this inspires you in your life. but when you turn 7, when you turn 10, when you turn 17, when you turn 21, when you turn 45, when you turn 60, you are not the same as you were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Why? Why? Because life changes. You will grow and change, literally from a natural standpoint. So why not be intentional? And we see in the movies how Adonis was intentional about his growth. He had moments where he was like, I'm tripping. Like, I'm having issues. I'm not getting it. I'm dealing with the problems of my own life. And I'm having to navigate all this stuff. And he gets to a point where he's like, you know what, bro? I need to figure this out. I got to go about this differently. I got to prepare differently. I'm not the same dude I was when I first started boxing. I'm not the same dude when I first got out here and was challenging the status quo. I'm not that guy. I gotta work at that. I got to become better. And one thing I know to be true, if you want to get better and grow, you got to put yourself in difficult situations where it pushes you to grow. You cannot shrink back. I know it's easier said than done. Because there have been many moments where I look back and I'm like, man, I shrunk back. Man, I realized that I didn't give it my all. But I'm telling you right now, it's important for you to do that, because the way that we transform our society and transform ourselves is recognizing that we need growth. You got to grow. You have to become better. You have to try to put yourselves in a situation that's going to make your life so much better. But you got to try. It's up to you. Nobody else can do it for you. You got to try. Even when going to the gym. At a certain point, I got to put my weight on that bar. I have to switch up the exercises. I would do this when I go work out. I do these different things like for about 5 or 6 weeks. I've gotten better at it. I wasn't good at it at first, but about 5 or 6 weeks, I'll keep doing the same pattern of workouts the same way. But about week 5 or 6, what I'll do is I'll switch it up. If for 6 weeks, I was doing deadlifts first, the next 6 weeks, I need to do bench press first. Just changing the order, just changing the weight, changes how my body responds to the pressure. Are you allowing yourself to be challenged enough under pressure to be able to grow? Because for you and I, that is all the marbles. If you want to get to the next phase or next place in your life, you're going to have to challenge yourself. If you want to become better with your money, you got to challenge yourself to be more disciplined with your money. I'm telling you right now, if I want to get to my goals as far as my weight, I got to be more disciplined and challenge myself to eat better. I can say it all day, but if I never do it, it doesn't matter. Because I actually wasn't committed to the process that it takes to do the thing that I'm talking about. Now, am I getting better at it? Kinda. But I still got a long way to go. The fact of the matter is, what I'm telling you is that you have to engage in the difficulty of trying to grow in the ways that you need to grow. But it's always up to you. It's always up to you. Like this conversation about personal responsibility is sometimes a tough one because our circumstances, our situations, our lives, our brokenness tends to inform how we believe that we can do what we can do. It tends to inform what we think we are capable of doing. It informs so much. But I've said it so many times on here. If you're still alive, that means you have more to do. If you still are breathing and living, you have so much more to contribute to our world. You have so much to give. But you have to recognize that you can give it. And so I hope that as you've heard me over the last 2 episodes, you understand that I'm telling you something that I'm living. As I'm looking at what's next, and I'm looking at, okay, I'm 30. What am I going to do in my 30th year of life? As I'm looking at that, trust me, I'm thinking about it every day. I've had so many conversations about how I'm going to think about my 30th year when I turn 31. And what am I doing to position myself for that to happen. That's the mindset we have to have. That's the bent we have to have towards accomplishing the goals that we want to accomplish. We have to be bodacious. We have to see, hey, you know what? I'm not going to let what's happening in my life stop me right now. Because there will be challenges and obstacles. It's just a part of life. But what are you going to do about it? I hope that you'll step up to the plate and do the things that you believe that you can do. Much love, and I'll see you soon here on Leading with Lee. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. If you want to get more information and connect with me, visit me at www.leeascott.com or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. So, thank you for watching. Much love, and let's get started.